Thanks for taking the time to have a chat with us. So you guys just released your newest album, The Beautiful Dark of Life, in December. You've been on tour for that. So Beautiful Dark of Life seems to be a bit of a sonic continuation from Baptize in a sense. How do you feel you guys as a band have evolved between the two albums? Were there any musical threads you felt that you started to pull on Baptize that you had a bit more of a chance to explore on this record?
Um, yes. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say because when you're in the middle of all of it, it's kind of hard to develop a view of it as if you were an outsider. Um, so I mean, like you said, it's definitely an extension of Baptized. There are a lot of similarities. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, like over the past however many years, maybe 4 or 5 years, we kind of just been like we've never had a set game plan when it comes to writing a record. It's never been like, okay, well, this album has to sound like this, or this album has to have this kind of vibe. We kind of just get together in a room and just start writing and throw stuff at the wall, see what sticks and what doesn't, and just kind of let the chips fall where they may, so to speak.
Yeah, like maybe like in that sense, it'd be like, oh, here's a cool idea that we sort of like touched on last time.
Right.
I'm still about that idea. Like, do you kind of do that in a sense? Like maybe some influences that were prevalent in the last record that you didn't get to explore. Do they come out in the writing room in that sense?
I think so. Before the typical, I guess, timeline for a record would be for the five of us to get in a room and just start writing for a month, 2 months, however long, and then go into the studio and then record it all. And then after that's done, go out and tour it and then kind of wash, rinse, repeat. This time around, or I should say for the past few years, it's like, okay, well, we'll get together for a week or two, start writing, and then kind of live with those ideas for a while.
Let them stew a little.
Yeah, just kind of like work in increments. And then between those writing sessions, maybe go on a tour or play some festivals or do whatever, and then come back, start writing again, and then um, eventually, you know, get into the studio and start piecing it all together to like, one cohesive body of work.
Yeah, sweet. Sweet. So you guys have had a lot of great opportunities to collaborate with other musos over the years. With during that hiatus period, everyone kind of going off and doing a few little things. And then there's that track that you featured. What was the name? Sierra Deaton on for this record.
Yeah.
If you had the opportunity to collaborate with any non-musical artist, alive or dead, who would it be and why?
Oh man. You said non-musical artist?
Yeah, non-musical artist.
Non-musical.
Maybe a painter or a sculptor or something like that.
Oh, that's tough. Um, I've always been a huge Star Wars nerd.
Oh,
Um,
right.
so I would say George Lucas.
Yeah, there you go. Shout out George Lucas.
Yeah.
Hit us up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so how do you guys go about crafting the track list for your albums? Like what kind of considerations go into determining the order of the songs? Like are you going for a specific like ebb and flow for the record as an overall piece? Or is it kind of just like this is the order that we worked on them?
For us, it definitely has to be it has to have a flow to it. Like you said, it's almost uh like how a film would work. You have the first act, the second act, the third act, and then there's plot points and stuff like that. Um, you don't, for us anyway, we don't want to front load an album with all of the more, I guess, mid-paced songs or some of the softer songs and then backload it with all the heavy stuff. You want to have it kind of mixed up a little bit. So yeah, there definitely has to be some kind of ebb and flow to it. And as far as coming up with the actual order of the track listing, um, it can be actually, I think it's harder than most people think, um, because you want it to be perfect. Because once you make a decision, that's it.
Yeah, it's done.
And on top of that, there's five of us, and very rarely do all five of our opinions align together. So you have to contend with that as well. So yeah, it's a lot of, putting them in a certain order and then listening to them in that order. And if it feels right, awesome. If it doesn't, then you have to go back and kind of move things around. So yeah, it can be an arduous process, but uh yeah, and my bandwidth for it is not as wide as I'd like it to be,
Mm.
but and sometimes I get to a point where I'm just like, "Oh, fuck it, whatever you guys want
That'll
to
do. Yeah.
do." So, but luckily I've got four other people that can facilitate that. So
Yeah. Do you ever get into situations where you're like, oh, this is kind of how I feel about it? Then someone else is like, well, I feel the opposite. And you're like, I disagree, but not strong enough to really argue with you about it. So if that's how you want it, that's fine.
yeah, yeah, it's
uh,
it's but then again, it kind of depends on your investment into it.
mm,
Like for me personally, the track listing is extremely important,
mm,
but at the end of the day, I'm not going to fight tooth and nail to get my way, you know.
yeah,
Um, but that's just me. Some people will do the opposite and be like, no, this is the track
yeah.
listing.
It's
This,
like it's got to go this way. Like, yeah, I'll die on
yeah,
this hill. Yeah.
right.
On that note, how much consideration do you guys take for the different, like for formatting? So like, back in the day when vinyl was like dominant, you'd have the two sides, so people would kind of do like a bit of a apex in the middle of like each side. With most people listening on streaming today, do you tend to format your track listing for that experience, or do you still kind of take into consideration people who might be buying CDs and vinyls, or is it a bit of a push and pull?
For the most part, um, it's kind of just the starting point, the end point, and everything in between. We don't really look at it as side A and side B, mostly because a majority of the population doesn't listen to music in that fashion.
Yeah,
In fact, I mean, now some more days people are, um, you know, focusing on maybe one or two tracks off of
mm,
a full album, which is kind of the reason why we released the whole thing in chunks.
yeah,
Uh, we released them in EPs, um, more specifically for the most part, we wanted to try something different as
yeah,
opposed to your traditional album rollout and just leaving a big body of work, or releasing it out into the world and then
yeah.
having people listen to it.
Just have
Uh,
more opportunities for people to engage.
exactly, yeah. And when you release maybe four, maybe five songs on an EP, those four or five songs have a better chance of all getting their fair share of attention. Um, Whereas if for my generation, like I grew up listening to full albums from front to back.
Yeah,
The generation after me, not so much,
mm,
because streaming and you can just kind of go to whichever song you want. So we kind of took that into consideration. So by releasing it in separate, smaller EPs, it gives each song a chance to shine in the sun. Whereas, like I said before, maybe two, three tracks get most of the attention and all the other ones just kind of fall by the wayside. Um, and I think so far it's worked. Um,
yeah,
we were in Europe just before the new year for about a month, and we were playing some of these new songs, and a lot of people were singing along to these newer songs that may be considered, a deeper cut. Um, and that actually kind of took me by surprise pleasantly, you know.
Mm.
So, are we going to do that again? I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but so far so good.
Yeah, on that note, like you guys have been in the game for a long while now. Do you, when you finish recording a song or putting a record out, do you have a good sense of like what song's going to be the one that pops off live, or is it kind of like you put something out and the crowd just they respond how they respond?
I've kind of learned that to never assume anything.
Mm.
Uh, because yeah, we've had songs where I've been, okay, yeah, like that song has to lead the album, like there's no question about it. And then the other four guys will be like, I don't know. And then that song that I was rooting for doesn't end up being the lead track, and I listen to it all, and I'm like, okay, yeah, actually, you know what, they were right. Same thing with live songs. There's been songs that we've played where I'm like, oh, this is going to be like people are going to fall asleep during this, and the crowd
So
will,
all the lighters come out and it's sort
yeah,
of yeah, yeah.
or they're going off. And then the complete opposite has happened too. I'm like, oh, this song is going to kill when we play it live, and then it's just crickets in the
Yeah,
audience.
just
So
texting their mums.
right, yeah.
Yeah,
So
cool.
yeah, like I said, I've learned never to assume anything.
Yeah, fair enough, man. So on this record, did you guys experiment with any new techniques, instruments, or like sounds that you haven't used in previous records? I did make a note. There was one song in particular. Uh, I think it's Drowning that has a synth tone that's like almost identical to Darude Sandstorm. Was that like intent? Was that intentional, or was that just kind of like it happened to happen?
Um, I can't remember because when we're in the studio, there's so much stuff going on, and the pace that we work with is usually pretty fast. So it's not, I don't have time to like sit there and like take it all in. It's just kind of like move, 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 move. So it may have been intentional, it may not have been. There's a song on the record called I that we we used the sample of an Australian crosswalk noise.
Oh, true. That beep sound.
Yeah, and I think it always I think it stemmed from the first time we were ever in Australia,
Mm.
like that because we don't have that here in the States. So when we first heard it, it was like, whoa, sick. Their crosswalks have blast beats. We should put that in a song. And it took us
I'm never not gonna hear it that way from now on.
um it took us, like a good 15 years to finally put it in a song, but we did. So,
Yeah,
but yeah,
sweet.
just little fun things like that you kind of experiment with, and we're always big fans of just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks and what doesn't.
Yeah. So do you have any I want to talk a little bit more about you as a guitarist. Do you have any non-musical influences or experiences that have shaped your approach to the instrument?
Um, as far, I mean, I don't know about like non-musical influences, but I mean, my overall attitude toward the guitar is constantly evolving and changing. Some days I just want to plug in the guitar and just play punk rock type stuff, like, all downstrokes, super simple, real raw. And other times I'll get this weird, I'll get on this like weird kick of like trying to improve my technique and try to be, Mr. Shredder dude on guitar. And other days I'm like, I'm focusing more on just being a better songwriter.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, it's constantly changing. I mean, that's kind of the beautiful thing about guitar, or actually, I mean, really any art in general, is that I will never know everything that there is about playing the guitar.
Mm.
Uh, so it's for me, it's like it's a journey that will never end because I'll never be able to learn it all. So yeah, there's always something new around the corner as a guitar player.
Well, on that note, that whole thing of like, can never really learn it all. How do you decide which kind of pathways you'll go down as you're doing your different practice routines and stuff like that? Like, what what inspires you to work, say, more on your songwriting or more on your technique or those kind of things?
It kind of just depends on my mood, really. Um,
So what you've been listening to recently, just like hear a mad shredder, you're like, all right, today is shred day, or hear a good songwriter, be like, today's songwriting day.
yeah, sometimes it's, sometimes it might be, the fact that, I haven't been practicing my skills for a month or so. Like, okay, I really need to get back into that. So then I'll focus on that. And then a lot of times it's listening to something. Like last night, I just went and saw a band play. They're called Dead Poets Society, and um, they have this riff that just totally stuck out to me, and I'm like, fuck, I want to pick up a guitar and do something like that right now. So it all just depends. Like inspiration can strike anywhere, anytime. It kind of tends to be at the most inconvenient times, but
Yeah,
um
trying to go to sleep at 3 a.m.
right, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
there's been so many times where I've had dreams where I'm writing this awesome riff and then I'll wake up in the middle of the night and be like, okay, that riff was so sick. There's no way I'm going to forget that. And then the morning comes and I'm like, fuck, I don't remember it at all. So having,
Gonna have to get a
having,
dictaphone next to the bed.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Having the voice memo handy is a definite plus.
Note to self. Bow bow now 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 now
Yeah,
now. There
exactly. Exactly. I have done that.
you go. So with your gear, are you much of a gearhead? And if you are, you want to run us a little bit through your live rig compared to your studio rig?
I'm a gearhead to a certain extent. My stamina and bandwidth for it is somewhat limited. Um, but like live, I've been using the Quad Cortex by Neural
Good
DSP.
units. Good units.
Yeah. I was on the Kemper for a number of years, which was awesome. It was kind of like like modeler boot camp for me because
Mm,
I prior to that I'd always used actual tube amps. So I got to know the Kemper pretty well and got used to the whole like modeling aspect of it. And then the Neural DSP released the Quad Cortex, which I would say about 90% of the reason I got was because of its size. It's
yeah.
extremely small, which it makes it easy to carry on a plane for like a
Mm,
fly out date or going overseas. I'll be using it when we're down in Australia.
yeah.
It
Yeah,
just
that's
it beats having to rent backline gear because you never know exactly what you're going to get. You
yeah.
order one thing, you end up getting something completely different. It's all kind of up in the air. Um, and the consistency is there. It sounds great. It's pretty user friendly because I'm pretty gear stupid myself. So the easier it is to navigate, the better it is for me. Um, and it just makes the overall touring just a lot easier and less stuff to worry about.
It's and that's they're well known for having. I think there's a few other bands out there that are on them as well. I think Megadeth has
Yeah.
been using the Cortex as well.
Yeah,
Uh,
I've been seeing more and more of them over the past year or so. And the modeling technology now it's come so far.
it's stupid good.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I mean, there's always purists out there who will naysay it. And I mean, yeah, in a perfect world, I wouldn't mind actually using an actual amp with a pedal board, but um, it the
The
convenience of
logistics,
it,
yeah.
yeah, the logistics and the convenience of it, it just can't be beat. So,
Mm.
uh, so yeah,
Yeah,
so and we're all digital now too as well. So it just makes life way easier for our crew because they're not lifting huge, heavy cabinets up and down flights of stairs or stuff like
yeah,
that. So
yeah. On the note of on the digital stuff, um, there's this kind of modern trend for a lot of modern metal bands that I think you guys kind of fit into, that are starting to allow more electronic and pop influences uh, into their sound, which I think is contributing a little bit to the waning popularity of guitar solos in songs. And there was recently those comments from Kirk Hammett, just talking about how people aren't really connecting with solos. So with that in mind, it was really cool to hear a solid like 80s style lead being ripped on that song, I Don't Want to Die.
mhm.
Um, do you find that the solos for your more iconic songs from earlier in your career are still popping off just as hard as they ever did? Um, and is are you intentionally moving away from leads in your songs to kind of respond to how audiences are reacting?
I don't think we're trying to shy away from guitar solos. It just depends on whether the song calls for one.
Yeah.
Like myself and our other guitar player, Dan, obviously we're going to be the ones going, yeah, I think this part needs a guitar solo.
Yeah.
And even when it blatantly doesn't. Um, so it's nice to have a few other people like kind of pull us back down to earth. Um, but yeah, I mean, it all just depends if the song calls for it or not. There's no point in crowbarring in something to a song that just doesn't need to be there, you know. And as far as like the older leads and solos and whatnot, I don't know if they're popping off more these days or whatever, but I think it's just because um, you know, when a certain song or something or a certain guitar solo for that matter has been around long enough, people are more familiar with
Mm,
it. Um, so I think that might have something to do with it. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't think we'll ever stop you putting guitar solos in our songs. It just depends on if the song itself calls for it or not.
yeah. Well, on that note, when you're composing and arranging your songs, how do you decide which guitar parts will like take precedence and contribute most effectively to the overall sound?
It kind of, again, it just kind of depends. Like when I demo stuff, I tend to, I kind of tend to overdo it. Like I put everything in the kitchen sink into the song. That way we can kind of pull
It's
out what
easier to trim it back.
need. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I figure it's better to have it and not need it
Mm,
than need it and not have it when when it comes to demos. Um, so uh yeah, it all just again, it all just kind of depends.
yeah, awesome. Okay, so I've got more questions. All right, last question for the evening, or the morning for are there any hidden or subtle references, Easter eggs within the album that fans might not notice immediately? You already mentioned our crosswalk blast beat. Is there anything else that's a little bit subtle people might not catch on their first listen?
On this record, not that I recall. Um, actually, well, on I think it was the song that I was referring to earlier called I. There's like a super sludgy, like kind of breakdown in the middle, and we ended up. It was like I remember it was really late in the day, so we were all kind of fried, and the delirium was starting to kick in, and there was a part where everything kind of just breaks out. We threw in the sound of one of those screaming goats,
True, true.
And again, we were like out of our minds at the time because we were all just fried. And it was just something as stupid as that just put us all in tears laughing. And I think there was a point where it came pretty close to making it on the record.
Oh,
But
damn.
if I remember correctly, I think our producer axed that.
Well, I hope your producer doesn't like having fun, clearly.
Yeah, I guess not.
Okay, okay. All right. Well, that's all I've got prepared for you, Travis. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
So you guys are on tour in Australia, starting February 7th, 17th.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, sweet. So anyone listening, make sure you get your tickets. Go check out their album, The Beautiful Dark of Life. Catch you around, Travis.
Awesome.